folks. Welcome to Plaidstallions Toy Ventures. I am Brian, your host. And seeing as it's the end of summer, I thought I would share with you some of the pickups I had on my summer vacation this month. This stuff has been sitting in a bag in my rumpus room waiting for this video for the past 3 weeks. The missus and I hit the road and visited our nation's capital this year, and we hit every antique mall, flea market, and vintage store we could find along the way. I didn't bring my equipment. We just wanted to have some alone time. I also didn't have big expectations of this region because I haven't been there in years. I'm sharing some of the photos from the trip here, and I want to say I was blown away by some of the vintage toys I saw. I encountered way more goodies than I anticipated, and I actually ended up with a few things I was actively looking for. So let's dig into the pickups, and I'll share some more sights along the way. One of the first shops we visited was a place called Nostalgia Warehouse. It's in Ottawa itself, and if you ever find yourself in this city, it's well worth a visit. The store is filled top to bottom with toys, movie posters, comics. Heck, I even found a stack of old 80s Doctor Who fanzines I had as a teenager. The owner even had a Tura Satana figure on display, which was a big, happy surprise for me. What I picked up was this. It is a Henshin Cyborg Ultraman mask and outfit. I don't know what fashion doll he's on, but it is not accurate. I'd like to pretend that I have a rule that I always pick up Henshin Cyborg stuff when I see it in the wild, but that's not true because I've never seen it in the wild. In case you're unaware of this line, briefly, it's essentially a Japanese take on Captain Action, but using the Hasbro G.I. Joe body as its original base. The range was very popular, and they produced multiple characters from Japanese animation and television. I have created a video about this line before, and I'll leave a link here, but I'm a dabbling enthusiast at best, not a connoisseur. This character is not the original 1966 Ultraman. This is Ultraman Zafi, as evidenced by the rivets on his chest plate. I've always had a serious trouble finding even a basic Ultraman character for my collection, and I'm jazzed to have any start. If anyone knows where his booties and gloves can be had, I'd love to chat with you. This was not something I expected to take home, and if this had been the only thing I found on the trip, I'd have been really content. However, I was very lucky this trip, as we'll see. The next day was a Sunday, and we decided to hit all the local flea markets. We started in a town called Stittsville, which is what I'm showing here. And while we didn't pick anything up, there was a really cool Barbie doll museum in one of the buildings, and it was well worth a look. I'm not a Barbie collector, but I really enjoyed looking at the 60s and 70s iterations of her. We then drove an hour to a flea market in a town called Morrisburg, which is much larger with over 100 vendors inside and outside. I haven't been here in about 10 years, so I couldn't believe how much good vintage was there now. Some of it was a little pricey, but I did manage to pick up one really fun item. This is a Buck Rogers Flying Space Fighter by Fleetwood Toys. Fleetwood made a small series of rack toy items for Buck Rogers, with the large majority being label-slapped items you'd seen before. But they also made 2 different versions of the iconic Starfighter from the series, along with a pretty cool plastic model I'd like to own. This foam glider actually looks like something from the series. Also, it was on a Canadian card, which I'd never seen before. That is definitely one of my significant weaknesses, so this came home with me. We spent the better part of our last day visiting the little towns in the area, and I think we maybe saw another half dozen antique malls and antique stores when we finally arrived at Murray's Flea Market in Carleton Place, Ontario. At this point, we're both pretty tired, and I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know this place existed, so I had zero expectations of what was inside. However, it turned out to be the real gold mine for me. All it takes, I guess, on a trip is one single booth, and oh boy did I find it. Not only was it loaded with vintage toys, but it was having a bit of a sale. So here's what I scooped up. I have no idea who made this Frankenstein finger puppet, but it was so charming that it just had to come home with me. I didn't even care about the price. I later found out it was an early 90s item and that there was also a witch in this series. It's just got such a cool retro 70s charm about it. And Frankenstein is my favorite monster of all time. So I'm really glad I've got this guy facing me on my desk right now. This is a Beneath the Planet of the Apes playset by Medicom. I believe the series is called Kubricks. This came out in the late 1990s, and I managed to resist their charms when they were brand new. However, this great set was on sale for $5, and that was just too good a deal for me to pass up. Beneath the Planet of the Apes scared me as a kid, and like a lot of things that did, I'm now fascinated with them and collect them. The main appeal for me was the set itself. It is the destroyed New York City train tunnel, but in the movie, this set was recycled from a flop musical the year before called Hello, Dolly. For some reason, I see the humor in a toy being released based on a recycled set. It's not for everybody, but I really dig it. I had to grab this guy. It's Zaranite from the second wave of Mego Star Trek The Motion Picture figures, and it's one of the more desirable Aliens characters. But the reason I had to have him was obviously some ambitious kid had decided to make him more screen accurate with some Testors model paint, and actually did a very nice job, to be perfectly honest with you. And, you know, I have this figure, and I'll just put a comparison between the two here. But there's just something about this. I run into this occasionally where somebody take a Buck Rogers, Black Hole, or Star Trek figure and try to make them more screen accurate. And to me, that's a bit of a charming backstory. You know, a kid who maybe doesn't play with these toys anymore, but is still a fan of science fiction and maybe Star Trek in general, and is giving that toy a bit of a second life. I love this. I love stuff like this. I also managed to pick up Perseus and Thallo from the Mattel Clash of the Titans range from 1981. That movie came out when I was 10 years old, a time where I was also very interested in Greek mythology. I begged and only ever got the good guys in this line as a kid because my mother refused to buy Calibos because he was so ugly. While I've dabbled in this line as off and on over the years as an adult, I noticed a few weeks ago that the only figure I had from this line in my collection was Charon the Boatman, who I picked up 30 years ago. He's likely the rarest and most expensive figure in the set, so it's a great place to start a collection from. So I made a mental note to look for the others when I'm out in the wild. So getting these guys for $15 each was just awesome. They're in good shape. Now, they usually come with swords and shields, and I may have some of that kicking around somewhere, but I'll just probably order reproductions from my friend Todd over at Figure Fiend. He does amazing work for this line. I'm good with repros on these guys, and now I'm on the hunt for a decent Calibos. And the hunt is always my favorite part of things, so I may be a little picky when it comes to the last figure in this set I need. I have no ambition of getting Pegasus or the Kraken. I'm just good with the 4 figures. My big and final pickup from this mall was this original Tomy Tron light cycle. I love the Tomy Tron toy line. I like it better than the movie, and the same goes for that Wicked arcade game. I picked up the Tron figures at a Mego meet 2 years ago, which was something I had been wanting to do since I first heard of them in the 1980s. Last summer, I also picked up this NECA reissue of the light cycle, and I've had it on display. But getting an original 80s Tomy light cycle was something I'd hoped to find. So when I saw it in this booth, my heart skipped. It's got a little damage, but the broken piece is inside and will make a terrific display item for my toy room. One thing that can't be salvaged is the original ripcord, which was included, but it's just little shattered pieces in a baggie. Honestly, I wouldn't display this with the cord anyways, and I don't plan on trying to make this toy work, so I'm fine without it. Now that was my major find, but there's one more item that followed me back home in a different way. On the first day of our trip, our first and closest stop was a toy store in a town called Smith Falls called Toy Heaven. I had never been, but I've been following it from afar, and I was really excited to check this place out. However, I probably should have checked their website first, because when I arrived, it was the first day that the store would be closed due to a move to a new location. To make it worse, the window was filled with cool toys, and it made me wonder what else was inside. I wouldn't get to know because the shop wouldn't reopen for another couple of weeks. However, one item in the window really got to me, and I thought it would make especially for a fun Toy Ventures video. I kept thinking about it so much that I ended up looking it up on their website. I noticed that it was very fairly priced, and the shipping also wasn't a deal breaker. So I put it in my cart, and within 48 hours I had this. The Big Jim Sky Commander. This is a toy I've always wanted since I was 3 years old. Now this particular set was missing one or two pieces that was mentioned in the listing, and I'm going to try and track those down. They won't be too hard. When I do, I will be making a whole Toy Ventures episode just around this amazing item, and I'm hoping to have that out by September. So that is what I did on summer vacation. I hope you've enjoyed it. I also hope you've had a great summer. Thank you to everyone who's watched this to the end. That's always awesome, and I appreciate it. If you're new to this, please consider hitting like or subscribe. And if you're not new, please consider sharing it. It really helps. That's all the time I have this week, guys, but I'll be back with some new and exciting stuff in September. Until that time, be well, and talk toys, not other people. Cheers.